My name is Ryan. I've been working with Simon for about 5 years on investment properties and my personal property. I was attracted to real estate investing because I was looking for more of a balanced portfolio initially. Just all my savings were in the stock market, and I graduated in 2006, so that wasn't the best time. So was looking for something a little bit more stable that I could walk by and actually see my investment versus watching it decline in the stock market. But now I think it's more about family legacy. Having a daughter has got me thinking a lot more about the long term. So real estate allows me to be in the market, but also have a future perspective that's more than 5-10 years, which would impact her. I'm a big believer in Toronto. This is where my family is, this is where my work is, this is where I've lived for most of my life. So I think real estate helps me bet on Toronto itself in terms of what I'm seeing in terms of my personal life and in terms of my investments. One thing that we were always taught in school was, invest in what you know, and because I feel like I know Toronto and I feel like I know Simon, I've invested in both of them. I knew a little bit about real estate only because I'd gone to business school. I knew it as a vehicle for investments, but most of my experience had been in the stock market and putting my money there. Until I really met Simon, I wasn't really looking at investments in real estate. I was looking at it from a primary home perspective, but he convinced me that it would make a good investment. There were a couple of reasons why I went with them. Initially, it would have probably been a lot to do with Simon because he was my main point of contact. Simon gave me a perspective on the financials in the market, but he also owned property and he owned real estate, not just his personal home, but investments. So it gave me a sense of security that I wasn't working with someone who had just signed up because there was great commissions. It was someone who actually knew the environment, especially Toronto. And he'd gone through the same experiences I would have. Elevate Realty is really good at helping walk you through that if you're using their full service, where they will manage all of that. But even at the beginning, for me, I wasn't using their full service, and Simon and the Elevate team were always readily available to help guide me through who I might be able to contact, how I might be able to work through a problem. So they're always around and there for you, and that's why I've always stuck around with Elevate Realty. Elevate Realty, again, having owned properties, are really good at understanding what a landlord wants out of the entire experience. But also having worked with a lot of tenants, they also know what the tenant wants. So they're a really good bridge between the two. In Toronto, we have a lot of things that can happen in the market in terms of snowstorms, issues with flooding and all that can happen on occasion in different parts of the city, and Elevate Realty knows how to deal with all of those items. So it really takes a lot of stress off your mind. With a family, my perspectives changed, so I'm not as risk averse as I was, and still Simon's been able to find me investments that meet my changing lifestyle. I maybe want more long-term tenants in place, so I'm not always looking at a new tenant or trying to reevaluate someone, and they can pivot to help you find tenants like that as opposed to yearly going through the same process over and over again. Simon once took me to a property where we both hadn't seen it before going in, but the paperwork looked pretty good. We walked in and so there had been a fire, I think, in the house. The building had actually shifted, so you could actually see the cracks in it. Simon and I kind of walked into the basement and we're like, we might die if we go in there. So that's not an experience you commonly get in the stock market, but it was definitely an interesting one that I always remember. I spent a lot of time in the stock market because it felt like easy money, and real estate isn't necessarily easy money, but it feels more consistent and real, I would say. I love the fact that I can always drive by a property and see the property itself. I can meet the tenants. It feels more tangible that at the end of the day, people always need a roof over their heads, and if you can help provide that service by being a landlord, then you're helping people, but you're also helping your own investment portfolio.